Well, friends, good morning across Minnesota and across our fair land. I hope that you are hungry today. Welcome to February. It's Wednesday, February 1st of 2023, and welcome to our traffic safety hot dish. I am Mark Kindy, and I am one of our three TZD co-chairs. I'm with the Minnesota Department of Health. I head up our injury and violence prevention section in the state health department. With me as co-chairs are Brian Sorensen from the Department of Transportation and Mike Hansen from Department of Public Safety, our Office of Traffic Safety. We have several great sponsors for our program efforts and for our Hot Dish webinars: our Department of Health, our Department of Public Safety, and our Department of Transportation, and of course our great colleague, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, and we are thrilled for their partnership and their support. Some background for today for our information: our webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website. All attendees are muted, but you will be able to interact and intersect with our presenter today. And so we'll comment on that in just a moment. PDFs of the PowerPoints will be available, as well as professional development hours. And we can download those from our website and or from the web page there, and you'll see the link there at the bottom of the screen. This is a great chance to talk and share together. We've got a nifty button at the bottom. You'll see the blue cloud that's anchored to the chat. And if you want to share some ideas and perspectives and feedback with all participants, you may certainly do it via that way. You can also let the panelists know that you need some technical assistance, so the chat function works. And Linda and Stephanie will be our experts looking at that, although I'll pay some attention to that as well. But I'll focus most of my time on the yellow box, the Q&A box, and I'll be queuing up some questions for our presenter today. So as you have some thoughts or questions, feedback, comments that you want to address to our presenter, that'd be terrific. You can just fill that out, and I'll have that chat box or the Q&A box open and be looking at those comments and questions that you send. Well, our presenter today is Tim Johnson, and Tim has served as the director of NHTSA's Vehicle Research and Test Center, the VRTC, since 2015. As the director of this center, he's responsible for carrying out applied research and looking at an array of testing efforts to support programs in key areas, including advanced driver assistance technologies, human factors, heavy vehicle safety, electronic control systems, safety and cybersecurity, and an array of emerging technologies. It's going to be a terrific presentation, a great chance for us to learn and grow together. And Tim's a native Minnesotan. And Tim, it's great to welcome you back. We're even warming up for you today here in Minnesota. So Tim, welcome. I'll turn my camera off now and just be here to support and queue up the questions. So Tim, welcome.
Well, thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it. Let's see, and see, the first thing that I need to do is actually go back to my first slide. Pardon that, folks. We were testing some stuff initially, and I didn't get back to my
Happens all the time, no problem.
let's see. where I'll get this right soon. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, thanks again, Mark. Really appreciate the invitation. And yeah, as Mark said, born and raised in Minnesota, went to the University of Minnesota, graduating from the electrical engineering program in the early 90s. And so that's really, I'll always be appreciative of that. It's really set up my career in the federal government. So I am with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. As Mark said, we regulate the vehicle industry in the United States. So new regulation of new vehicle equipment and vehicles in terms of their crash worthiness and other advanced technologies. And I'll talk a lot about that today. The agency has a test center, its own test center. It's outside of Columbus, Ohio. That's where I'm coming to you from. And it's called the Vehicle Research and Test Center. So we do a lot of testing, hands-on testing of advanced vehicle technologies. And many of the video clips that I'll show today actually are from VRTC here. So with that, I'll stop my videos and just focus on the presentation. And what I'll do is so what I'm going to talk about is an array of vehicle technologies. And at NHTSA, we're really concerned about the entire crash sequence. So we do activities that run the gamut from preventing the crash in the first place to making the crash less severe if it does occur, through injury mitigation, structural strength of a vehicle, on through post-crash safety. And so what I'm going to talk about today is really all in this category here, all in the crash prevention category. So we do a lot of other activities here, but everything I'm going to talk about today is in crash prevention. And I'm going to divide those technologies that I'm talking about up into what I'm calling the levels of automation. And so some of you might have heard about some of the automated technologies that are starting to be developed much more. A lot of these are being integrated into vehicles. And so I will sort of walk the walk on technologies, vehicle technologies, advanced technologies through these various levels. And so just to go through these a little bit, so there's a lot of technologies, level 0 technologies, where there's no driving automation at all. There's no sustained lateral or longitudinal control. So lateral control, I'm talking about steering, and longitudinal control, talking about sustained acceleration or braking, but not both. And so this is how the industry sort of breaks out advanced technologies with respect to automation. And there's technologies that land sort of each of these levels. A lot of the self-driving technologies that you're hearing a lot about that are being developed are sort of level 3 and 4 type systems. And I'll talk more about this in the upcoming slides. And so when you get to level 3, it's a level where the system performs all of the driving for you. You don't, you're basically just sitting back, you're a passenger, and the only thing that you need to do is if there's something that the system requests a takeover from an occupant to the driver, that you need to take over and resume control of the vehicle. When you get up to level 4, which is where a lot of the development is in terms of systems that are not really out in the public domain yet much. For these types of technologies, people in the vehicle, when the level 4 system is engaged, don't need to drive the vehicle. The vehicle completely drives itself, but it has an operational domain limitation where it doesn't work everywhere. So that's kind of how things lay out. And I'll talk a little bit more about these, of course, in the slides upcoming. So basically, these levels that I'm talking about here, the levels of automation, you can kind of draw a bright line between these first levels and these levels. And so what I just talked about is really when you get into systems that land into like a level 3 type automation system or a level 4, you're essentially a rider in that vehicle. You're not driving the vehicle anymore. And everything below level 3, you are actually having to actively drive the vehicle. So a good deal of the technologies that I'll talk about today, and a lot of where the action remains, is in what I'm calling level 0 here. So there's no, what this means is there's no sustained automation. So there's no sustained steering, acceleration, or braking control. But there could be momentary, very momentary control. And so a lot of the advanced driver assistance systems map to this level. You'll see that in the slides upcoming. When you start departing from this and you start on a sustained basis controlling some things, some folks may have heard of adaptive cruise control. This is a technology that's been out for 15, 20 years. As an option on vehicles. And this is a technology that on a sustained basis will control your acceleration and braking. There's a lot of level 2 technologies that are starting to get into vehicles now. And so what level 2 does, it combines sustained control of longitudinal control, braking and acceleration with lateral control, steering. So a lot of vehicles are coming out with these types of systems that you can go down to your dealer and drive today. The big engineering challenge is kind of this big bright red line here. It's a big, although you're automating a lot of things in these types of level 2 systems, you're still having the driver is responsible to stay in the driving moment, so to speak, to be monitoring what's going on outside the vehicle, not checking your phone and email and all of that type of stuff. So driver engagement in these first 3 levels. This is could be in some cases starting to pull the driver a little bit away from being vigilant. So that's why we're, as an agency, keeping track of this level quite closely. When you jump over this red line and you get over to like level 3 and 4 and 5, if we can ever get to that, again, it's the driver or the vehicle, I should say, that's doing all of the dynamic driving tasks. So there is no monitoring of the outside environment that's needed on a moment by moment basis. So that's the difference in that. So now what I'm going to do is just kind of take each of these levels and talk about all of the technologies that are kind of at the fore for the agency and or industry, and just kind of talk about those and show those and explain what they are. So again, level 0, that's commonly referred to as advanced driver assistance systems or active safety technologies. There's no sustained, again, lateral or longitudinal control with these, but in some cases there is momentary control. So things like electronic stability control, forward collision warning, lane departure warning and lane keeping, automatic emergency braking, pedestrian automatic emergency braking, intersection automatic emergency braking, cross traffic alert, rear auto braking, blind spot intervention, head-on collision, and oncoming traffic safety assist are all technologies that sort of map in here. And as I talked about earlier, a lot of the action is right here. They're advanced technologies. There is momentary control in terms of automatic emergency braking, but it's not on a sustained automated basis. And so that's what separates a lot of these from really being driving automation technologies. Other important crash avoidance safety features, adaptive driving beam headlights. I'll talk a little bit about that. Impairment monitoring, drunk driving detection, and rear visibility. So I'll have a slide on all of these technologies. So electronic stability control, it's been out quite a while now. This is probably really the first crash avoidance, crash prevention technology that the agency regulated. And so we mandated this on all light vehicles via Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard 126. Again, that was quite a number of years ago. So that this one's in the books. Every vehicle, light vehicle under 10,000 pounds GVWR rolling off the assembly line has to have this technology. This is kind of a graphic that shows how it works. It basically applies individual wheel end braking. So if you probably experience this some in Minnesota, especially in the winter, you could have a sort of a spin out or a yaw event. And certainly you can do this on dry pavement as well, but if it's slippery, this happens a lot more, and you can sort of get more and more out of control and run off the road. So this phenomenon contributes a lot to run off the road crashes. And with the ESC, again, with individual sort of wheel end braking, it stabilizes the vehicle and keeps it going in more of a straight trajectory and keeps it on the road. So we went on then and mandated heavy vehicle electronic stability control, particularly for tractor semi-trailer vehicles, Class 8 vehicles. You can see a picture here. This is from the test center. And this is depicting what happens if you do not have stability control. You can see we have these safety outriggers here when we're testing. And you can see this trailer is tipped up. And if we didn't have these, you'd have a rollover event for the heavy vehicle. So we went ahead and required that on all tractor semi-trailers and motor coaches, again, several years ago. So that one's in the books. Technology, again, that's been out for quite a while, but it's just really gained a lot of market penetration in the last few years. It's forward collision warning, and it uses radar and camera sensors on the front of the vehicle, looks out ahead into the vehicle in front and gets a return signal. Or in the case of a camera, it also can do that distance calculation. So if you're coming up on a vehicle too quickly, maybe you're looking out your side window, there's just a lot going on, maybe something in the vehicle, and you're coming up on a vehicle too quickly, it will warn you of an impending collision. So a lot of vehicles have this as well, but not all. And we are looking strongly at that. The agency has something called the New Car Assessment Program. It's a consumer information program that was put in place, I think, in 1979, but we continue to upgrade it. And one thing that we introduced several years ago was what types of advanced technologies we felt the public should particularly be tuned into in terms of safety. So this was one that we put into NCAP. There's also the next flavor of that, which you can have braking support. So again, a few years ago, that sort of next evolution of this technology came into being. And now, instead of just giving the driver a warning, if you're coming up too quickly on a vehicle, you actually can automatically brake the vehicle to avoid that collision. And it's also available in trucks as well, as this picture shows. So this is another slide on automatic emergency braking. Again, as I said, it builds on forward collision warning to add active braking capability. This is probably the number one or one of the top safety priorities, regulatory priorities for the agency at the moment. So we are doing a tremendous amount of testing out here at the test center in Columbus to support that effort. And there's kind of a couple of different flavors to automatic emergency braking technology. There's something called crash imminent braking. And so if you are in a situation and for some reason you don't apply the brakes at all, you don't touch those at all, and you're coming up on a vehicle in front of you at a fast rate, and the system calculates that the vehicle's not going to be able to stop with assistance, the system will automatically brake the vehicle. The second flavor of that is called dynamic brake support. A lot of times when you're braking in an emergency situation, you don't put on enough brake force. And the system can calculate that. Like it's just a human factors thing. A lot of folks just don't jam on those brakes enough to get all of the system capability, that braking capability out of the system. And so this system supplements that and applies full braking force in emergency situations. So again, we've included this in our NCAP program a few years ago, and we are so that's not a regulatory program. That's just a consumer information program. It gives information on these technologies, and it talks about which ones sort of pass the agency's tests and which do not. And that gives the consumer good information on vehicles that they might potentially buy with this technology. However, we moved on. It's in our regulatory agenda. And we are planning to, and in the process of developing regulatory proposals for both light and heavy vehicles to require this technology. This is just kind of an aside here, these two pictures, and you'll see these, at least this one more. This is a fake vehicle. And so we use this a lot in our testing. So for all intents and purposes, this looks like a real vehicle from a radar and camera perspective. It's been tuned to that. And we present this would be in front of a vehicle that has AEB. And we use it for other technology testing as well. And I'll show some video clips of this. This is kind of inside view of a test vehicle. We put robotic controls on the steering wheel and robotic controls on the brake system, accelerator system, so we can do precision tests. We can program the vehicle. So this would be a vehicle with automatic emergency braking in this case. This would we can run the test with high precision again and again and again to test the system. That's needed in federal regulation. You need to have a test that's highly objective and highly repeatable. Okay, that's very, very important. And so we pay a lot of attention on that when we're developing and doing our testing and developing regulatory proposals. Excuse me. So here's a couple video clips to just show that. Here's that fake surrogate vehicle, as we call it. And here's a vehicle that has the technology. And let me run the video clip. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the audio to work, but it really doesn't add a whole lot. It's just kind of a vehicle sound here. But let me roll the clip. So that was all the AEB technology. If one of the scenarios in the real world is you have a vehicle just stopped, like it's had hard braking event, maybe there's a lot of traffic in front of it, and it's just stopped. And I know you've probably encountered this a lot, or at least I have. You'll be on the freeway, you'll be traveling at speed, 60 miles an hour, maybe a little bit more, and within a very short order, things will slow down in an extreme rate. And so that would be an example of where this technology would come in. Other scenarios, in addition to a stop lead vehicle, as you can imagine, is just a hard decelerating vehicle. Maybe it's going from 70 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour. Within just a short distance, it's down to 5-10 miles an hour. So that's another situation. And also just vehicles going at a much slower constant speed. And so those are kind of the three situations that we're developing tests around. So just to point out, the reason we use a fake vehicle here and not a real vehicle is sometimes the technology, as we're testing it, doesn't work. So here's a video clip of that. So it's kind of an art and a science to just developing something like this. It's got to look, for all intents and purposes, from this vehicle's radar and camera sensors that make up this AEB, the perception piece of that system. It's got to look like a real vehicle, otherwise you're not testing the system correctly. It also needs to be struck, and you want to have efficiency of testing. So this type of thing we can put back together to look like this in about 10 minutes. And so that's And then there's some suppliers of these technologies that we work with. Here's a video clip of heavy vehicle test. So as I mentioned, we're looking at this type of technology for heavy vehicles as well. So imagine you're this person, if this was a real vehicle, and for some reason you had to do a hard stop, or maybe you're going at a very low speed and you've got a Class 8 truck coming up behind you. And so here's a video clip of, again, this is out at our test center. This is a video clip of a test.
Run 227, speed 80.
So that vehicle here was going at 50 miles an hour coming up, and again, completely on the system to stop before impacting that vehicle.
Run.
I mentioned in my quick rundown of the level 0 technologies a couple of slides back that there's a lot of flavors of automatic braking. So I just showed a couple where we're reacting to a vehicle in front. There's also technology that can sense pedestrians. Again, this is actually in production. There's vehicles rolling off the assembly line that have this technology, and we want to regulate this and actually require these types of technologies in vehicles. And so we're developing a regulatory proposal, similar type technology here, radar and camera systems, and it senses a pedestrian. Here's a couple, and this, again, we can't test with real people, of course, because these systems aren't perfect. You never want to do that. So we have to spend a lot of time and energy just developing a mechanism for testing these. And so we test both adults, and we're mimicking children in these tests as well. This, if you saw a broader shot here of the screen, this would be mimicking an adult walking across the road, maybe at an intersection or something like that. So a crossing path type setup where the vehicle would be coming perpendicular to that path of walking. But here's a video clip, and this is probably the most challenging situation. You've got a small child, they're obstructed. Maybe these are parked cars and they're coming off a sidewalk and they're crossing the road. And you'll see a vehicle coming up this way that has pedestrian automatic braking, and you can see the capability of the technology. So again, that was completely the system there, being able to detect that child, so to speak, in the form of this test mannequin here. But being able to, that's a fairly quick reveal time there. And so the technology has advanced quite a lot in the last few years, to the point where the agency feels moving forward with a regulation is warranted.
Tim, two quick questions on this.
Yeah.
In this situation, do you know how fast the car was going when it came up? And then on the truck example, I think you said the truck was going 50. How fast was the car going when it came up on the car? So two quick questions in from the congregation.
Yeah. And that was an example on the truck video clip. That was an example of a stop lead vehicle test. So in that case, the vehicle wasn't moving at all. But that surrogate vehicle that I showed, that fake vehicle, there's a little platform underneath it that's robotic controlled, and we can actually have that vehicle. I mentioned two other situations. A fast deceleration of a vehicle in front of you, but it's still moving forward, maybe go from 60 to 10. We can program that surrogate vehicle to run at that, to mimic that deceleration and test it like that. That's one of the key tests that we're developing as well. So, but in that particular video clip, that was just a stop lead vehicle. So you do see stop vehicles. Again, maybe they had decelerated at some point before, but they're stopped when they present to the vehicle coming up.
But then the truck was traveling at 50 behind it. And how about that car? So not the surrogate vehicle, but the test vehicle. Do you know how fast it was going when it came upon the stopped vehicle?
I mean,
Yeah.
the car here.
Yeah, the car, that exactly.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I misunderstood. It'd be about the same
same.
speed. Yeah.
Okay,
So we test at a variety of speeds. And so starting from relatively low approach speeds on this vehicle up
Okay.
to, there's just practical limitations when you do a test like this of how fast you could run the test safely. And you
Okay.
get to a point at about 50 miles an hour, even though the system will activate above that in the real world. We're sitting at about maybe 50, 60 miles an hour as the top
Gotcha.
speeds that we can sort of safely test. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of the boundaries here. Yeah.
Perfect. A couple of other questions related. So in Minnesota and maybe our surrounding states, we often have either dogs, cats, or deer that lunge across, kind of akin back to the pedestrian example. Any further work on avoiding deer and some of the examples that way? And then for now, like this time of year, do these systems work on icy roads?
All great questions. So let me take the first one first. So in terms of deer, let me just broaden that a little bit to other objects. So for other objects, absolutely, we are expanding the testing of this technology. Not yet for deer, although there are surrogate deer targets, and we may get to that. But before we get to that, there's a couple of other key target type or things that are struck out there. And what I'm trying to get to is bicyclists and motorcyclists. And so we have active research right now that instead of this target, it's a surrogate, it's a fake bicyclist, it's a mannequin on a bike that presents itself. It could be in a crossing pattern as the vehicle comes up. We're testing it in that, and we also have a surrogate motorcycle target. So we're knocking things out, and so yes, the universe of AEB can it's expanding. It really started just with vehicle to vehicle type detection. It's moved on to
Right.
vehicle to pedestrian detection, and in the future it might be more more universal to other targets, and could be including deer, but we haven't really tested that. Again, we kind of work down the crash frequency. And so what are the most frequent crashes that we see in the real world? We have a data center at NHTSA that does a census and a survey of the entire United States. So we get that estimate, that crash estimate, and we estimate all different types of crashes and the frequency and the severity. So we kind of look at frequency and severity, put those together. What are the top priority things? And we marry that up with what's mature out in industry. And so like the bicycle technology, motorcycle technology, and perhaps other objects, deer, etc. It's not there yet. We're doing some experimental work, seeing how these systems react to this kind of targets, but it's not something that would be in the ballpark of sort of like a regulatory thinking at this point. Does that answer it,
Yeah.
Mark?
Thank you. I think that's capturing it. On the test, maybe on your test course there.
Yeah.
So Columbus gets you get some real winter weather, and and maybe able to simulate. What about maybe using some of the test snowmobile courses up by International Falls for some of your winter? I'd like to do some of the automated emergency braking up
Right.
there.
Sure. No, great question. And let me kind of separate maybe what NHTSA does
Okay.
from what industry does. And so industry, as they're developing these types of technologies, they will do a whole gamut of tests, including probably the inclement weather test. How does our system? What is the envelope? When we're developing a regulatory test, it has to narrow down to a feasible objective, highly scripted type of test. And so typically we don't, when we're developing a regulatory proposal, we don't develop it with a slick surface in mind or with a rain type of situation in mind, unless it's absolutely necessary. And so again, in these types of situations, it's predominantly not inclement weather that you see. It's oftentimes, and who knows what folks are doing, but it's oftentimes what we see is it's more the good weather, sunny weather, dry roads, where people are kind of distracted, or there's something going on that's taking their attention, or maybe it's not distraction, something else, but they're just driving off the road. They're departing their lane, or they're losing control. Something's going on. So but it's kind of a different admission. Definitely industry would be looking at probably all those situations. We try to narrow it down into the most probable, highest frequency scenario that we think is representative of minimum performance. And we develop that for our regulation. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, thanks a lot. That's a great distinction between the testing and the developing the regulatory proposal.
Yeah.
Do you have a comment about the automated emergency braking and how it does function on icy or snowy roads?
Yeah. I mean, it will. I'm sure it will function. There's always, it comes down to the road adhesion, coefficient of friction between your tires and the roadway, and all of that kind of thing. So you're going to have longer stopping distance in inclement conditions. Of course, you've got, ABS systems that help with that. Anti-lock braking systems, ABS systems help with that. Been on vehicles for many years, but it's not going to work as well. Because you're not going to have that high coefficient of friction, which can really crank down the speed fast on your vehicle. So. Okay, moving on. Here's another flavor of automatic braking. So you kind of sense the theme here. In 2018, we did a regulation before that, but by 2018, that regulation, Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard, required that all vehicles have rear visibility systems. Okay, so typically it's camera sensors, and I'm sure a lot of the vehicles that folks in the audience here today drive, you put it in reverse, and you see a video. You see a picture of what's going on in back of you via video. And so that's all resulting from this regulation. And so since 2018, all vehicles, light vehicles below 10,000 pounds GVWR had to have this. So the trend in these advanced technologies that we see, you saw it in forward collision warning, it advanced to an automatic braking piece. And so here it's also matured. And so in addition to rear visibility, now we have rear automatic braking technology. So it's not reliant upon the driver to look at the video and see a small child, for example, but it will actually automatically brake. So we are looking at that as a possible future technology for this program that I mentioned earlier, this new car assessment program, which provides, again, consumer information to the public. So we're studying that. We're studying the crash issue, and we're also developing test procedures. How do you test this technology? How do you assess it? So here's a video clip that shows how the technology operates. So again, that kind of mimics maybe backing out of your driveway. There's maybe you've got a hedge here you can't see, and there's a small child, or it could be anyone, adult, that wanders back there. And for some reason, you're not paying that much attention to the video. This brings it to the next level. It just automatically brakes the vehicle, and it's not going to impact that small child. So working on that technology as well. Mark, did you have a question?
Just you even though I know it's a mannequin and a test case, your heart's in my chest. So I mean, two comment. One question that came in from the group is, what a kind of going, not as much a situation in a garage, but how does fog or rain or snow affect that forward car detection, and does it affect or reduce the pickup or the recognition of the vehicle in front that all of a sudden is going much slower or has stopped? And so how does it work with the kind of in the real world
Right. Really depends on the sensor that you use. And
Okay.
so, like a radar sensor would not be impacted by fog. It would just go
Okay.
right, it doesn't necessarily see the fog. It would function fairly well, I would think. When you get into camera systems that are looking at the forward scene from a camera perspective, absolutely. If you've got, some obscuring phenomenon like fog or that type of thing, then those would probably be impacted. Although again, technology is always advancing, and so the image processing that can be done now to make sure the target that the system's reacting to is actually a vehicle or a pedestrian, that just keeps advancing. But fundamentally, cameras, visual type sensors would be affected more, and things like radar sensors would not be.
Okay. Maybe the quick question here with this picture is from an equity standpoint, how long does it take us to get from a Cadillac to the either we probably wouldn't be retrofitting old vehicles, but to the kind of the fleet of newer vehicles? What's the dissemination rate, and from the equity standpoint, a few people can afford the Cadillac, but
Right.
yeah.
No, it's a great question. It actually, the trend now is a lot of this technology is standard equipment in a lot lower trim levels. And so
Perfect.
the Toyota Camry and Corolla or whatever, I'm not saying those are low end vehicles, but they're more the everyman or every woman's vehicle, right, as opposed to the Cadillac. So go back 10-15 years, absolutely, that was a concern. There was a lot on the upper trim level vehicles, but it is migrating into vehicle models pretty much across the board. This technology, to some degree, not as much as some of those earlier technologies that I was talking about. So you see, this is not on our radar screen for regulatory activity at this point. So it needs to advance a little bit more. We're looking at trying to create some market pull by putting it into our consumer information program here at NCAP. So that's where our research is really targeted now. But it is on some vehicles, and it will probably grow in the future, just like the automatic emergency braking has forward collision warning type technologies have for light vehicles and trucks. So this would be just a little bit behind in terms of technical maturity than those first technologies I talked about. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Here's another technology that's been around quite a while. It's called lane departure warning. And it's offered on quite a number of vehicles. And so here, typically have a camera that detects lane markings, as kind of shown by this graphic here. It's picking up these lane lines. And if you're drifting over the lane line, it will give you a warning indicator. And it's intended to, help the driver, assist the driver, stay in their lane, not drift off, potentially run off the road if they're distracted or drowsy in some way. So that's been around for quite a while. It's been on our new car assessment program to try to encourage that technology. But the next flavor of that is called lane keeping support, LKS. And so now, instead of just a warning indicator to the driver, there's actually perhaps some brake torque, or more often it's a steering torque, steering torque that'll gently try to steer the vehicle back into the lane. And so you can override that that type of steering torque. It's not, something that you can't override if truly your intent is to do that, and the system still thinks you should not. But it's again, it's a corrective type driver assistance technology. As I mentioned, the basic warning technologies in our consumer information program. We recently, as an agency, put out a request for comment, RFC. Actually, it's a few months ago now, and asked for feedback on potential inclusion of this technology into our new car assessment program in consumer information. And there was something called the bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed about a year ago by Congress, and it asked NHTSA to mandate this technology, this lane keeping support. So a lot of activity. We have been doing research in this in the past, and through activities and the agency needs like this, we are putting a lot more emphasis in the research area on this technology in the years ahead. So that's that technology. Another technology, again, we're still in that level 0. These aren't automated technologies, but they're advanced technologies. And so this one, again, a certain flavor of this has been around for quite a while. Blind spot detection. Again, many of you probably have vehicles that in your side rear view cameras here, if somebody's sitting here in your blind spot, you'll have a light lit up on that, and as they're coming up here and get into that blind zone, you have an activation here. So it's a driver assistant aid that helps so you don't inadvertently just go over into this vehicle. It's intended to reduce lane change and merge collisions. So, and again, there's a next flavor of that that I will get to in the next slide. Maybe that's more interesting. So beyond blind spot detection, again, there's all these warning technologies that have been out there for a while in development. They've started to migrate into vehicles. They're all kind of migrating to some type of active control. And that's the same case in blind spot detection. And so this video clip, here's our trusty surrogate vehicle that we use in a number of different tests. In this one, Mark, back to maybe one of your questions earlier, you'll see this running at speed alongside this vehicle. This can go up to about 50 miles an hour. And this vehicle has what we call blind spot detection, blind spot interference type technology. And so here, if you're moving over and you get that indication on your side view mirror and you somehow don't see it or you ignore it, again, there's some active steering in this vehicle that will steer you away and try to nudge you back into this lane. So let me play this video. So again, that was all the system. Again, if you inadvertently just were drifting over there and there's somebody in your blind spot, there'll be a slight steering torque, could be brake, but it's typically steering that gets you back in your lane. Actually, I have another video clip where, again, we tested a system and it didn't work, and it goes all the way over and impacts this vehicle on the side. Not severely, but does impact it. And so again, just another example of why you want to test these types of technologies with not real vehicles, because you get very close proximity in some of these technologies. Here's another flavor. Eventually, I guarantee you we'll get off emergency braking, but it is a very interesting technology, has a lot of different applications. And so this one is extending the capability of this vehicle-to-vehicle AEB technology to intersections. So if you've got, here's our trusty surrogate vehicle again. Just picture that's a real vehicle and it's turning. It's making a turn. and it's a close proximity situation. Again, this is technology that will react to that and stop that sort of crossing path, turn across path type situation. This technology is definitely in its infancy. And so it is still being developed. We have tested some early systems, and just to see how they operate, what their potential is, what their performance is. And so we are continuing our research into this type of technology. So this intersection technology, another technology that's on the way. We'll see how this one does, but again, it's a very obviously severe crash type, a head-on collision. So in this case, here's the vehicle. It has the technology, and you want to pass this vehicle or a vehicle in front of you, say, and you've got a vehicle coming this way, and you go out, and you don't have clearance to pass. This technology will again, through steering, bring you back into this lane. And so this is very much in the future. We haven't really tested a technology that's really looks like it can robustly address this situation yet. So, but as you can imagine, again, fairly low frequency crash type. There's not a lot of head-on collisions, but when you have them, they're very often fatal. Intersection collisions, again, we're really interested in this. It's about 25% of all crashes. There's about 6 million crashes in the United States every year. So about 25% of them are crossing path, left turn across path type situation. So future technologies that definitely hit on some safety issues, but definitely some maturity to go as well in terms of development by industry. Here's another technology that the agency has addressed. It's called adaptive driving beam technology. And so it's a system where a lot of times when we're driving out on the roadway, we don't use our high beams. There's sort of an art and a science to it, right? But sometimes it's just like, there's always some vehicle coming, in front of me, or I'm coming up on a vehicle in back and I don't want to glare them with a high beam and all that. So we don't really use high beams that much. But if you ever do, if you're on a country road, you put those high beams on and you can get a lot better visibility and a lot better visibility down the roadway. But so wouldn't it be great if you could have a technology that, as this picture shows, it's darkening out this area, but it's lighting these areas. So it's adapting the beam pattern. And also, wouldn't it be great if you had an oncoming vehicle here that it would momentarily adjust the beam pattern so you're not glaring this vehicle. And then when that vehicle passes, it again lights up this area here. So that's what this technology does. We were petitioned as an agency by industry to allow the technology. And we completed a final rule last February allowing this technology. I'll just show a quick video clip here that kind of shows what I tried to explain here. So you see this area is darkened out here. Here's a vehicle coming, and it darkens out. It doesn't show up that well, but you can see kind of that dark area. So it doesn't directly shine on that vehicle. And so that's how that technology works. We'll see how much of this we start seeing in the United States, but it's again kind of an exciting technology just from a visibility standpoint on the part of the driver. It could contribute to reduced pedestrian deaths. It could contribute to the animal situation that we talked about earlier, and just having that visibility more by taking advantage of that high beam type power, we're excited about. So we responded to that and completed that in February of 22. Another technology, it's a bit out into the future yet, but it's one that the agency has been working hard on with industry. We've got a consortium of most of the automakers actually that we've been working on. And what it is a system where we're trying to detect blood alcohol content in a vehicle. And so if you get into a vehicle and you're above 0.08, the point of the technology is that within a very short amount of time and with very high accuracy, you'd be able to detect that and take measures that would prevent a driver from going out at high speed on the road or on the roadways. And so there's a lot of policy issues here, as you might imagine, in this technology about people being able to drive their vehicles and not have folks inconvenienced and all of that. So all of that is being thought about and worked about, but on the technology side is really where I'm coming into play here. And we're looking at a couple of different approaches. One is direct detection of that blood alcohol content, and one is actually monitoring. So kind of indirect monitoring of the driver via a camera. Maybe there's some behavior signature that is a very strong signature that it indicates with high correlation that they are impaired at a certain level. So we're looking at that. We're looking at a lot of work here in the direct detection area. So in the direct detection area, the program is called the Driver Alcohol Detection System for Safety, or DADS. There is a website, www.dads.org. I'll give you a lot of great information. So two direct detection technologies that we've been working on: a breath-based technology where you might have a breath sensor here. Somebody sits in the vehicle, and within less than a second is sort of our specs. The system is able to detect through exhaled breath the blood alcohol content of this person. And so that's the technology there. A little bit about how that works in the explanation here. We're also working on a touch-based technology. So there's a lot of touch-based ignition systems now, doing away with keys, but it could be another button as well. You touch it with your finger, and there's a laser that basically are infrared via infrared light that shows and reflects off your skin surface of your finger, and again within a very short amount of time can tell your blood alcohol content. So the breath-based technology is a little bit ahead of the touch-based. This has been a tougher nut to crack. The breath-based, we're actually starting to do some initial field tests of this technology where we have a few vehicles equipped with the system. It's not yet quite small enough. I mean, one of the challenges here is just making this very sophisticated technology sort of small enough where you could actually integrate it into a vehicle. Vehicle space in the dash and everything is extremely congested under there. There's a lot of systems in here. So we're trying to miniaturize the technology and the sensors to enable integration, but we are able to, on a certain level at least, integrate on some very early prototype vehicles and start testing this technology. So we're very, very interested in that. So just a little bit more about that. As I mentioned, we have a cooperative agreement with this entity called the Automotive Coalition for Traffic Safety, or ACTS. I think there's about 20 companies that are a part of that. Again, we're doing naturalistic, as I said, it's field tests. That's what naturalistic means. Controlled in vehicle tests, looking at cars and some heavy truck fleets have volunteered. And we're further refining the technology, and we're actually gearing up to do some research on site here at VRTC. I mentioned the driver monitoring systems research, sort of indirect monitoring via camera. And again, this bipartisan infrastructure law, again, we were working on it hard before, and we've even increased and accelerated our work because Congress has told us to look at requiring some form of advanced drunk and impaired driving or impaired driving technology. So we're working very hard on that, and Congress checks in with us periodically on that. Here's another technology. We've been petitioned as an agency to allow video cameras instead of your mirrors, your side mirrors here. There are systems that replace those with a camera, and so that'll pick up this side rear view image and project it. Perhaps that's what this is meant to simulate here, is just a video screen. So you'll pick up the rear view, side view image here. It'll project it on a screen here. And we have some prototype systems from VW and Audi. They've been looking at other suppliers and car companies. And so we're looking at a lot of human factors work here. How are drivers able to sort of process this information as opposed to a standard side view camera? So we're doing a lot of human factors work in this area that will lead into policy decisions for the agency in terms of whether we sort of move forward and allow this type of technology or not really. So again, examining driver acclimation issues relating to the display, location, how they can focus, et cetera, et cetera. How does it perform? We were talking about weather conditions before. Well, now you've got something exposed to the elements, to rain, all types of things, and it's electronic type camera sensor. So obviously it's not going to perform the same as just a housing that has a mirror. So we're looking at those types of sort of robustness performance issues as well. So I'm finally done with level 0. You're probably like, oh, geez, I'm glad you're done with level 0. We can move on to those other levels. These will be a lot quicker because there's a lot less stuff, a lot less technology that maps to these, but I'll cover them quick. But Mark.
No, go ahead. There are an array of questions coming in, but go ahead and finish, and then we'll see how many we can get through. I'm cognizant of time, so I don't want to keep you longer than you promised, and also want to be sensitive to the array of folks attending. Lots of great comments and questions, so I'll have them try to organize, and then I'll wait until the end.
Great. Sounds great. Yeah, so let me quickly walk up the staircase here of automation levels. Again, on level 1, these are technologies that map in here that have sustained lateral or longitudinal control, but not both. So that's level 1. So again, sustained lateral control would be steering, side to side control, and longitudinal would be braking and acceleration, this axis here. A couple of examples. Again, I mentioned briefly adaptive cruise control. It's been out quite a while. System that can automatically set your speed. If there's nobody in front of you, your vehicle is going to run at your set speed. So you set it at 65 miles an hour. Your vehicle is just going to keep going at 65 miles an hour. If there's a vehicle in front of you that say it's going 50, the system will automatically adapt your speed to match 50, and it'll maintain a certain headway here between you and the vehicle in front. There's been some action on the truck side about truck platooning, kind of a similar type technology, but on trucks here, where you have a radar system looking out and maintaining a gap here between trucks. As far as I know, it hasn't really taken off a whole lot in terms of actual real world implementations, but it has been something that's out there and has been studied and continues to be studied. Level 2 systems, again, walking up that automation staircase that I showed at the beginning. Here now you have sustained lateral and longitudinal control. So you have steering wheel, throttle, and braking all in the same system. So when you engage that, all of that is being controlled on a sustained basis. There's some different flavors of that. Most systems are here in the highway driving assist. You might have heard of like the Tesla autopilot, for example. That's this type of technology here. There's also technology that's at lower speed. Some systems would operate both lower and higher speed. Kind of a traffic jam assist, as we call it. So you're slogging to work. What is it? 694 there, 35W, and then the Twin Cities. you know, and it's kind of stop and go traffic. This might relieve the driver of some drudgery of accelerating, decelerating, constantly accelerating. So low speed, it's kind of chugging along. You're still monitoring traffic. You're still very much in the loop of driving, but it's a driver assistance type technology. And then there's something called self-parking. Here's park assist. I won't spend much time on this. Maybe not a huge safety technology, but there's technologies out there. You pull up here, you engage the system, and it automatically parks in this space. Our concern, of course, is if there's people in a parking garage or something like that, there's people walking through there, does the system recognize that and actually stop and pause while that pedestrian child perhaps, you know, clears that space. Traffic jam assist, I kind of explained that already. Again, here's your vehicle. It has the technology, and say there's another vehicle that in this scenario is pulling out, and you're kind of coming then up on this other vehicle. That the system will automatically adjust and brake for you in case you didn't quite pick up that quick movement and this vehicle. And again, highway pilot assist. There's several systems out there now from a lot of different manufacturers. You'll start seeing this in vehicles. It is in a lot of vehicles, quite frankly, now. And I mentioned the Tesla system. This is a gauge display of a Cadillac system. They have a system called Super Cruise out that again can control braking, throttle, steering at the same time. And as long as you're paying attention to the forward roadway, and if you say you're out on a freeway or something like that, it could go for many, many miles. Some systems require you to touch the steering wheel to prove that you're monitoring everything and you're in control. You're not just pitching the whole driving task over to the system. These systems don't have enough intelligence to do that. And other systems like this Cadillac system, they require a camera. They monitor the driver with a camera. So if you're looking away from the forward roadway scene, it knows you're not paying attention, and it'll start interacting with the driver then to encourage you to get back into the monitoring of the roadway. So activities, again, light and heavy vehicle research, human factors, a lot of human factors here. Oops, sorry about that. A lot of human factors in terms of can drivers safely interact with a system and maintain proper roadway vigilance when you have a system that's actually automating all those things. So I'll talk a little bit about this later. We have a standing general order that we put out in June of 2022. And it covers level 2 ADS and ADS vehicles level 3 through 5. Here's a clip. Here's a URL, I should say, on NHTSA's website where you can learn more about the standing general order. But it's basically an order that we put out to try to get information from industry on when these types of technologies are having crashes. And so we're gathering information on if there's a level 2 system that's been engaged 30 seconds prior to a crash, particularly if there's a injury or fatality, we're collecting that information. And on ADS vehicles, which automating driving systems, levels 3 through 5, we're also collecting information if there was an impact or a crash or a property damage crash 30 seconds ahead of time. You can learn more about that here. Talking about ADS systems, that's a subset of driving automation systems, again, at level 3, 4, and 5. Most of the action, and I keep doing that, most of the action is on level 4 technologies. So there's a lot of companies that are trying to develop fully automated shuttles or vehicles. Waymo is a company that's been very active in this space. There's many other companies, Aurora, and others. A lot of the big companies, General Motors, have been doing a lot of research to try to develop level 4 technologies. Again, these are technologies where you're really more of a passenger. If you're in the operational domain, as I'm calling it here, this is where the system is operational. This is where it will work. If you're within that operational domain, you're really just a passenger in the vehicle, and the system is responsible for all driving tasks, and also something I'm calling safe fallback here. So if the system somehow has a malfunction, there's a safe fallback by the system, not at all due to the driver. I think in the interest of time, Mark, I'll keep moving and talk a little bit about automated driving systems. This is just a graphic here that shows that a lot of automated driving systems, self-driving systems that are being developed, they use LiDAR technology. So LiDAR is a technology that you've probably seen them on some prototype vehicles. Here they are here. Here's another one here. They spin at a high rate of speed and you get reflections of light off of all of these objects, and the system can use that to really paint a detailed picture of what's going on and what the situation is, and really is a foundational sensor to these types of vehicles. And here's a couple of examples. It's a self-driving low-speed shuttle. There's been a lot of pilot programs. I don't know if you have any in Minnesota there, but there's some pilot programs around the nation about low-speed automated shuttles. Here is a self-driving delivery vehicle. So this is a very, there's a lot of companies that are getting into this space. During the pandemic, we started seeing even a little bit more of this actually in the real world, delivering groceries and things to people. So here's another form of automation. And yeah, there's just a lot going on in this space. So we've tested actually a low-speed shuttle out here at VRTC, and we look forward to testing more technology as we go. And I'll just finish up here on automated driving technologies and get to questions. But, you know, again, I mentioned the LiDAR sensor. There's a lot of other sensors. These are very complex systems, radars, cameras, digital maps, communications, all come together on these vehicles. And it's very much an industry that's still on the move, still in development. There's not a lot of this technology that's out in the real world yet. You know, we're still upper right there picture. We're still looking at trying to find the Knight Rider vehicle from the 80s that did everything and talked to you and everything. So if we could just find that, we would have all the secrets to self-driving technology. But we still have a government team looking for that on the Hollywood backlots. Just briefly, I'll finish up here quickly. We're doing a lot in research out here at the test center. How do you test these things in terms of tools, methods, performance metrics? We're trying to research and test available technology. I mentioned the low-speed shuttles. Do a lot of human factors research. How can people interact with these things safely? And there's a number of things, both getting in a vehicle like this, and if you're outside of a vehicle and one of these things pulls up, say you're trying to cross the road, how do you know this thing's not gonna, start up and like, how do you communicate? What's that human factors look like there? And we're also doing a lot in terms of crash worthiness. There's a lot of alternative designs here. Vehicles aren't going to look like they do today. They're going to look, think of an old horse and buggy, the carriage seating where you're facing each other, stagecoach, whatever, maybe from your old Westerns. That's what some of the technology, the cabins are looking like. So if you get in a crash in one of these, what happens? And so we want to study that. With that, there's some activities that we're doing. We just did a regulation. One of the things that we're working a lot on is trying to adapt our regulations, because they were all written during a time when we didn't contemplate not having a driver in the vehicle.
Sure.
There's a lot of times where we have to adapt our regulations now to be applicable to the future when we don't have occupants in there. And so there's a lot of that work that remains, but this is one final rule that we put out back in March of 2022. Here's a website. You can go here and take a look at it. It's called A/B Test. So this was set up that any entity in industry that's testing on a voluntary basis, they can enter information on what they're testing, where they're testing, how many vehicles are they testing. And so that's kind of an interesting read if you want to kind of get a national picture of what's going on. That would be not necessarily capturing everything, but there's a lot of companies that have entered information in there. So it's what's sort of helps the agency and everyone track what's going on. And again, I mentioned this standing general order. So if there are crashes involving these advanced systems, we want to know about it. And so we're gathering and we plan next actions based on that information. So sorry, Mark, I went a little bit long there,
Tim,
but
Well, we were interfacing with questions and there are a lot more. And so what you've prepped us for really is a part two, because we want to go into, how much this costs. We want to go into cannabis. We want to go into just an array of how these technologies work and the interface with the human occupant. This was terrific. So Tim, thank you.
sure.
Thanks for doing Minnesota proud on this on this presentation.
There's a lot here, as you can tell. It's hard to cover everything and cover it well.
It's just incredible. Yeah. So
flavor for it.
we'll go through the questions. There will be more that we'll want to feedback to you, but thank you. And to all of our attendees today, the presentation, the slides will be available. If you'll go to we've got a slide for you, and I think maybe actually Linda put it in the chat, an evaluation hyperlink. Or you can go to we've got a nifty QR code for those who are facile with that technology, and please evaluate and give us your feedback to this presentation, suggestions, further questions for Tim, and we can organize those and share with him, and we'll try to package this up in follow-up to the presentation today. But thanks to each of you for attending. Tim, just want to say thanks again to you. Just outstanding. I have a page of notes and the outline, and it's going to be intriguing to follow up. So let me invite Linda or Stephanie, our hosts from the Center for Transportation Safety, to lean in for any details I may have missed. Oh, thank you, Linda. Our next Hot Dish will be April 12, 2023. At 1000, and we look forward to seeing you then. But we'll have this again, the slides for today, we'll have those available on our website for you to review and pursue further questions with Tim. Tim, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. It's great to be here.
To everyone for attending, thank you. Have a safe rest of the day, a great February. Take care.